we are starting. Welcome to the 12th online OCAP fireside chat, our regular event that we are having for our international audience approximately every 2 months about Ukrainian agriculture in Europe. We talk about its origins, structure, how it became a backbone of the Ukrainian economy since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion, and what place it has for the EU-Ukraine trade relations. My name is Nazar Bubitsky. I'm director of the EU Office of the Ukrainian Agribusiness Club, UCAB, based in Brussels. UCAB represents export-oriented farmers and agriculture enterprises from all corners of the Ukrainian agricultural sector. And today we will talk about a key topic of the last months in, let's say, in the chronicles of EU-Ukraine trade relations. The conclusion of a trade deal that updated and modernized the terms of trade under the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. The deal was concluded on October 14 by the EU-Ukraine Joint Committee for Trade Matters, and it closed a very tense and dramatic chapter in the EU-Ukraine trade relationship. Let's quickly remind what we talk about. We talk about the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, the terrible first months of the Russian onslaught on Ukraine. And back then, in June 2022, EU did what it does best as a trade bloc. It offered Ukraine an economic support by suspending the remaining tariffs and tariff-rate quotas. We have a very excellent panel today. Dr. Alexander Zhemoida, former director for Department of International Trade at the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine, and today a team leader of Recovery and Reform Support Team for Agriculture in the Ministry of Economy, Environment and Agriculture of Ukraine. Dr. Veronika Movchan, Academic Director at the Institute of Economic Research and Policy Consulting, and Alexandra Avramenko, Head of Integration Committee of UCAB. Now let's dive straight into our discussion points. First, I would like to turn to Alexandra. Alexandra, can you give us a little bit of a background? Why do we have this agreement? Why and how is it different in terms of trade that were before it? And what are the key elements? If you can briefly walk us through what we have in place.
Sure. Thank you, Nazar. Hello, everyone. I'll give a little short introduction as well as greeting words on behalf of UCAB. We're very happy to meet you once again. It is our utmost pleasure to speak with you, to bring the important topics into our everyday life discussion, as well as bring again the question of trade between Ukraine and the European Union and how the whole EU integration is going on in terms of agricultural sector, and we all know that agriculture is very much important both for Ukraine and for the European Union. So when we're speaking more about the trade agreement between Ukraine and European Union, we always need to keep in mind that there is this abbreviation of DCFTA, Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Area between Ukraine and European Union, which is basically the trade part of the association agreement. First and foremost, we had this DCFTA since 2016. It was operational till 2021. It has 5 years completion, and according to the Article 29, both sides decided that in 2022 they will start renegotiating or basically revision of the new trade agreement in line with the association agreement. However, unfortunately, due to all known circumstances, the full-scale Russian invasion to Ukraine in 2022, European Union decided to make unprecedented decision and introduced the autonomous trade measures, which were in place from 2022 till June of 2025. Basically, the last revision of 2024, during the last revision, European Commission stated that this revision would be the last and the sides would return back to the question of renegotiating the trade part under the DCFTA, which basically took place in June 2025 with a finalized positions approximately in July, and basically in mid-October, with the decision of the Association Committee in Trade Configuration, we have finally received our agreed by both sides, but also agreed by the 27 EU member states, final version of the trade agreement. What is necessary to always keep in mind with the trade agreement is that before the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian agri-food exports were limited with approximately 30 TRQs, which are tariff-rate quotas, according to which Ukrainian agri-food products were limited with the access to the European Union and could be, could get low. No, cannot say. Okay, so the access was limited. And also, after the access was finished, the Ukrainian agri-food products were subject to the most favored nations tariff rate, not tariff rates, import rates. Sorry for that. Too many words could be misleading, but I'll do my best to keep you in line with what is happening. So in 2021, Ukrainian agri-food products were limited with 30 TRQs approximately. Most of them include cereals, milk products, meat products. Also were limits on processed fruits and vegetables. This is to be in a nutshell how it was.
Well, Sandra, sorry for interrupting you. Agricultural trade, we always know, is not really free across the world, especially the EU is really not an exception. Why do we have TRQs? Why there is no free trade there? And what does it vary across product lines? I think it's important for our readers to understand. The word
Okay, so
sensitivity. How can you explain the word sensitivity that always has been there hanging in the negotiations?
but sensitivity. Okay, let's get so in 2021 we had 30 TRQs during the ATMs. Unilaterally introduced by the European Union, we did not have any restrictions. So basically, EU abolished all the import quotas and also import tariffs for all Ukrainian products, including agri-food products. And in 2024, when we had the last revision of the ATM, European Union introduced the limits for the 7 sensitive products. How come they are sensitive? Because of the feedback of the European stakeholders, the member states, but also the associations, were defined 7 sensitive categories, let's call it this way. We had corn, poultry meat, eggs, oats, barley, honey, and what was the last one? Eggs, I assume. Yes. So basically, these were the most sensitive products. However, we also need to keep in mind that it's not only Ukraine that our knowledge. Moldova also had 7 restrictions for sensitive products. However, for not 7 the same sensitive products that European Union has introduced for Ukraine, but rather the other 7 sensitive products that apparently the strong side of the Moldovan agricultural sector. So from this we can make first of the conclusions that European Union, following cannot say the wishes, but the position of its stakeholders, decided to limit the sensitive products in their opinion, but however, we can consider them the strong sides of the exporting nations to the European Union. Agriculture has always been a sensitive story for any other country. We all understand this. But in terms of Ukraine, for us, before the war, the agriculture was approximately 40% of our foreign earnings from the export activities. Right now, during the full-scale invasion, the figure is 60%, which explains the meaning of the agricultural sector for the stability and predictability of macrofinancial situation in Ukrainian economy. However, we can also understand the European side that the agriculture has always been the sensitive story, with the common agricultural policy supporting the development of the agricultural sector of the European Union, but also some specific member states, especially those that were entering the European Union during the last enlargement, they also needed some support in terms of following the regulations of the European Union. So the story of the sensitive products and the willingness of the European Union or any other country to support their agricultural sector is pretty obvious, right? Because people are working in the rural areas, and this is basically the backbone, the starting point of the economy, but also the part of security, which also includes the food security of any other nation. So with this, we still return to the question that right now Ukraine has cannot say 30 as it was, because during the negotiating process, Ukraine and European Union decided to abolish some tariff rate quotas, giving more space and basically liberalizing access to the European Union for, let's call it, less sensitive products, but also slightly increasing the quotas for some other products. And I think Veronica will speak more on that, how the TRQs has changed. So my role right now is to remind us all that agriculture has always been the sensitive part of all the nations. That's one side. The second side of it is that European Union, following the story of the integration of Ukraine to the European Union, also pushes Ukraine towards the regulations and standards that are in the EU. And I think we will discuss it more after the presentation of Veronica.
Of course, of course. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Now we would like to turn to Veronica. Veronica, I remember your team, together with the German economic team at the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate, prepared a very detailed study of the effects of the new trade arrangement for Ukraine. Considering, in fact, how important the Ukrainian farming is for the Ukrainian economy, especially for exports. Can you share with us your main findings? How do you see the impact of the new terms of trade for key agricultural products from Ukraine? Perhaps we understand that the European Commission had to maintain a very delicate balance between the geopolitical need to support Ukraine and the need to address let's say, the backlash from European farmers who felt the heat from Ukrainian agricultural inputs. Veronica, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear friends. It's my great honor to be today with you and to present the study that was prepared by German Economic Team Project and jointly by me and Dr. Riccardo Giucci. And I will go quickly because Alexandra already did a great deal of introduction, but just to highlight some of the key findings. Basically, we analyzed the changes that happened after ATMs expired and Ukraine agreed with European Union on the new trade deal, revised the CFTA. And this duality makes this analysis and explanation and the perception of changes a bit complex, because we have always keep in mind that we have like two baseline for comparison. On the one hand, we have the old TRQs, old DCFTA, which was embedded in association agreement. It was changed on the ones for poultry. And basically, that is something to which Ukraine returned in trade with the EU in June 2025 after expiration of ATMs. On the other hand, we have ATMs. We did in our analysis comparison with 2024, which already had some peculiarities. It was emergency brake mechanism discussed by Alexandra, but still, mostly it was duty-free access for most products, because even for emergency brake, it was not used for all 7 products which were announced. For which this emergency brake mechanism was announced as a possibility, only for 4 of them, for honey, eggs, barley growth, and one more was actually used. So we have two comparisons and we have two baselines, and we have to understand what we are talking about. Basically, if we are talking about what happened compared to old TRQs, there's something that was written in association agreement and something that was actually replaced by a new agreement starting 29th of October. We see quite a significant change. And I want to highlight, outside these TRQs, which we'll discuss in now, and outside some of the entry prices, which is a program that the export controls used by EU for most trading partners. It covers some of the fruits and vegetables for which they do not want exports cheaper than some certain limit within seasonal peaks of production. Other than that, all duties, including duties on agriculture products, are zero. So we have to understand that this is something that we are still fighting for, the liberalization of that, and we have got one step, but not ideal. We were taken out of this duty-free haven, if we can say so. But other than that, we don't have any duties for any other products. And here also we have here our lovely maize, which has so far duty of zero outside tariff-rate quota. So it's also one more specific regime. But let's talk first what changed. Parties indeed agreed for liberalization. It was 4 TRQs were completely removed. Frankly, they were not really used, but now Ukraine can export them duty-free if they once decide. And some products were withdrawn from other 6 TRQs. So some yogurts, some kefir, buttermilk, mushrooms, grape juice, protein concentrates, and many other products became duty-free. They are not any more regulated by these TRQs, which is actually also highlight. Alexandra said that, but I'm not tired to repeat. TRQ is not quota. It's no quantity restriction. It's a very complex tariff with several stages. At one stage, duty is reduced, in our case, zero. At the other stage, we use another duty, in our case, MFN. So it's no quantitative bans, just duties, sometimes very unpleasant. And for 26 TRQs, if we calculate it from the old list, we have expansion, sometimes very significant expansion. No change happened only for 4 TRQs. 3 of them are meat, not exported because of the still happening veterinary restrictions, and for cigars and cigarettes. Plus, duties were reshuffled. Some of them were merged, like for sugar syrups and other sugar processed products. Some were created. We have a new TRQ for flour, which is very positive. It was something that was asked by producers, because then flours were in cereal duties, in wheat, in corn, in barley. It was very hard to compete with these bulk shipments. So actually TRQs were reduced to 31 from 36 with quite significant revision and expansion. I have a very long list of changes, but I will not go through that. Basically, if we look what happened there, if we assume that all exports under TRQs would be, duty-free exports on the TRQs would be used, it would give us about 630 more millions of exports per year. It's a 35% increase compared to what we had before, according to all TRQs. But this is hypothetical, because actually we traded, and with ITMs we traded much more extensively. So but to understand how these TRQs affect actual exports, we have to understand whether new TRQs are above or below exports that existed. We did the comparison with 2024, which is last year. Actually, another comparison would be to have it with average, but for last years, or maximum for last years, but we compared with what we had just a year before. And if it's new TRQ is above existing export level, with after all the reshuffling, then we say that it's no immediate short-term effect. It might become binding and once again create problems in the future, but not immediately now. And if TRQ is below something that we observed in 2024, then TRQ creates a barrier, and then we use a partial equilibrium model to understand how significant is the barrier. What will be the change in exports to the EU because of that? We did it for all TRQs. Once again, it's a lot of figures. I will show you conclusion and will be happy to share the presentation for those who want to dig deep into results. Basically, what we see as a result, that despite the fact that the new TRQs are much more favorable than old TRQs, they are insufficient to compensate for loss of ATMs. And estimated reduction in Ukrainian exports to EU amounts to $1.1 billion per year. It's annualized change. So basically, new TRQs are better than old, but not as good as we had before, and they were not even in short term. They do not compensate the loss of ATM, temporary but very privileged special regime. 7 TRQs bear the losses. It's wheat, barley, out of cereals. Maize is out because TRQ is small, but duty is 0, so maize is out. But wheat and barley are something that for which the TRQ is actually binding. We do not expect exports over TRQ because the tariff is prohibitive. It's also poultry, eggs, sugar, honey, and apple juice. These are the 7 products for which Ukraine will have to pay much higher duties and for which we expect a significant reduction in exports. Out of that, wheat brings the most losses. It's actually almost 900 million per year, accounting for 4/5 of the total reduction. Other significant will be the next following will be sugar, then poultry and others. And the question is, what will happen? Because we definitely lose in the EU market. And then what the business would do, and I assume our today's discussion will support that, business will reorient. And we did the analysis of reorientation. We did the analysis of this impact. But before that, just one more, we want to highlight the comparison between this old and comparison old new and ATMs. You see the first and second comparison, and you see that, for example, for especially striking for sugar, wheat, and barley, they see that while it is a huge expansion, for example, the sugar, it's 5 times more, but it's still absolutely insufficient to cover the exports that existed before. The exports was 2024 already restrained by emergency brake was 320,000 tons and new TRQ is only 100. For wheat, it's even more striking change. So what will happen? Reorient. And reorientation, we looked at the price wedge, whether it's possible to get higher or lower price outside, and what is the transportation cost. And what is the result of our estimate? First, the analysis of structure of Ukrainian exports last year and the global trade shows that there is a possibility to reorient all these products, although it will be much less lucrative than stay on the EU market. Their loss in total exports is amounted as 253 millions. So we are compensating 3/4 of the total of loss of the EU by reorienting. The orientation will be 891 million, but we are still losing 253 million, and mostly because of the transportation cost for wheat and for price wage for sugar and for price wage for poultry meat. Definitely, agriculture is a very special market. Every year we have own conditions, own prices, but the general trade is clear, and I think Ukraine has to work to return to the EU market, which is most convenient in terms of transportation, and very nice in terms of prices, as soon as we can. The membership, that would be just fine. Thank
The
you.
best solution. Thank you very much, Veronica. This was a very, very comprehensive overview, but I'm afraid that your findings are not very bright. I mean, not very hopeful. So we arrive in the end of the day, our exporters arrive at 1.1 billion euro per year of losses, as compared with a period of previous 3 years, and we have to diversify. So our exporters have to find the ways for the crops to be reoriented to third country markets. So while we all know that the war rages on, the Black Sea the Ukrainian Black Sea ports, particularly the Great Odessa ports, remain under the constant threat from Russia. But I'm afraid this is not the end of the story. We have at least two other very interesting, rather unusual elements of this arrangement, which are about the link between maintaining the quotas offered to Ukraine under this arrangement and a request to Ukraine to implement a list of EU legislation in the area of agricultural production standards. And the other element is the safeguard measures. I would like now to turn to Alexander Zhemoida. Alexander, you have been an ultimate insider in terms of trade mechanisms and trade negotiations between Ukraine and the rest of the world, including the EU. How would you comment this logic of the link between the agricultural production standards and keeping the quotas workable for Ukraine? Why is it in this agreement, considering that Ukraine also has a status as a candidate country? So basically, as a candidate country, we are supposed to approximate legislation as a part of pre-accession talks. Over to you, Alexander. How would you comment that?
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, great. First, appreciate for this invitation, because I believe I'm one of the most the biggest fan of your set of your interviews and these meetings, and it's usually interesting discussion. So I'm glad to participate in such discussion. Answering to your question, Nazar, you see, during this period of negotiation, I catch myself that it is very interesting to observe, since my understanding that European Union continue to create approaches, continue to, you highlighted with Alexandra the issue of sensitivity, and sensitivity is a part of not only the negotiation with Ukraine. This is also a part of negotiation with Canada, with Mercosur, with other countries. So European Union creates the approach, continue to create the approach, and I believe this is good, because we are the part of some sort of evolution of agreements. And since Ukraine, not only the trade partner, and you mentioned absolutely correctly, Ukraine is at the same time trade partners and future member, and to follow all European rules is like obligation, and Ukraine committed to follow all rules from one side. From other side, right now, for trade partners, most of those requirements, it's rather hidden technical restrictions than rules. Just following the logic that European Union have a higher in most cases, have a higher requirements for quality and market standards requirements than globally applied. So third countries have to follow the lower standards than European countries inside. From other side, my observation that sometime during the decision in creating this particular decision about Article 29, by the way, Article 29 is a very like bright example, because just following the language of the article, this article not about the restrictions, this article about additional liberalization, and using Article 29
You mean Article
to
29 of the
introduce
Association
additional
Agreement?
quotas. Sorry?
Yeah. You mean Article 29 of the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, just the technical.
Yes. Yes, thank you. At the same time, we have Article 42 in Association Agreement, which also about the procedures of introduction of safeguard measures. We have also a whole agreement in frame of WTO with a description of clear procedure of introduction of safeguard measures. And to follow this logic, countries need to just to justify the introduction of any safeguard measures based on evidence-based justification, based on proportionality of losses, and based on temporality. So every safeguard measures need to be introduced for a certain period of time using this methodology of evaluation or assessment. So a good thing, to my understanding, that European Union and Ukraine rise in this decision of introduction of the additional TRQ within Article 29. Anyway, we'll need to come back to this evidence-based assessment, and which is extremely good for us, because previous discussions with Europeans wasn't that much about figures. It was about sensitivity, it was about a number of other reasons, discussion about how Polish farmers or other farmers will be suffered from trade. But at the same time, this part of analysis of the market brings us additional understanding about not only about the farmers, but also about industries, processors, traders, about the consumers, whether consumers' losses was evaluated during the preparation of this decision. So I see that it creates these TOQs and this decision amendments to agreement creates some constraints for Ukraine. At the same time, it brings us additional opportunities, because in the first period, we have at least clear understanding that the agreement need to be reviewed in 2028. So, and during this period of time, we have like a lot of homework to do, not only as Ukraine, but together with the European Union. For European Union, it is interesting probably to also to see how Ukrainian this decrease of supply will influence to European markets, will influence to European consumers, will influence to competitiveness of European industries, processing industries. Additionally, it can be also like space to cooperate, because I understand that in this decision, when European Union introduced this TRQs, it was also discussed a number of other like supportive measures regarding trade support for redirection to certain markets. And here is a space to discuss how European business can participate in it. And what Veronika just mentioned, that logistical costs will be like the core topic. So here, I believe that it also brings us a number of opportunities, not only as Ukraine, but also together with European Union. Back to your question about the standards. You see, some of the standards is already completed by and already fulfilled by the companies who already supply to European market. And here is discussion more about whether this additional supply from additional companies who are not fully in line with European requirements right now, like necessary for European Union or desirable for European Union, because I understand that all Ukrainian businesses already recognized the importance and attractiveness of European market. Alexander, you have a
Yes,
right hand.
Alexandra, this is my function, Alexander, if I may. Alexandra, you want to add a few comments? Please go ahead.
Many things to reflect on. I love this type of discussion. I love this discussion with the smart people. Okay, so let's start. Let's start from the point where Veronika mentioned that Ukrainian agri-producers will face losses because of inability to access the European market right.
A bit of a glitch. Let's give her time. While we have this little pause, yeah, go ahead. You're back with
Yes,
us.
I'm sorry. Something has changed in the video. So sorry for that.
It's okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so Veronika mentioned that the agri-food exporters will face losses when exporting to third countries because of the logistic issues and stuff, but also with the fact that we are limited right now with the access to the European Union. So the latest figures, it's just the 4th of November. So we now have already the figures as of the 10 months of 2025. What we can say is that right now we account already losses in the general export of agri-food products at the level of 1.8 billion euros. Out of this 1.8 billion euros, 1.7 billion euros is not exported to the European Union. So basically, when we compare the 10 months of 2024 with 10 months of 2025, we have already minus almost 2 billion euros, which is quite enough in our scale to understand that it will have a greater influence on the economy and macro-financial stability and in general on the situation in Ukraine in terms of GDP and people's revenue and stuff like this. So this is the first thing. The second thing, what I wanted to mention is the exact products where we see the decrease in exports. Those are fruits and vegetables. Those are grains and processed grains, which is partially connected with the TRQs to the European Union. As Veronika said, like wheat has significantly decreased in the products that could be access to the European Union, the amounts. But still, it's also about the processed products very much. It's also processed meat and fish products. It's also sugar and confectionery. And it's also meals, which are the group 23, the meals of sunflower and soybeans. Therefore, the question is about reflecting to what Alexandra said about the support that Ukrainian products could get from also the European Union in order to get to the third markets. Why? Because right now, as we all understand, the situation with the exports of Ukrainian products is very much limited in capacity. In capacity in terms of access of the new ships to the ports of Big Odessa, but also limited with the capability to pay the high insurance rates connected to the war risks. This is the part where I very much like to remind that it's not only big Odessa seaports that are operating in the Black Sea region, but also some other, for example, Russian seaports are also at the same region. However, they do not face the same, let's say, limits with the ships or, for example, so high insurance rates. So with this, we can definitely see that Ukrainian exports, in order to be redirected to the third markets, needs to be supported. Supported with any possible support, cannot say just from the European Union, but this is specifically referring to the flanking measures that were raised during the revision period. That's one thing, but maybe with the help of some other actors at the, let's call it global stage, that are deeply involved in the export activities, who could also support the activities that are in Ukraine.
Alexandra, if I may quickly interrupt, or you already have finished, you touched a very interesting element of the agreement that I also wanted to talk about, the flanking measures. The Commission, as far as we understand from the media, the Commission did recognize the problem that Ukrainian exports will be displaced from the EU market. They have to find alternatives in order to continue generating export revenues for the Ukrainian economy. But is it that easy task for the Ukrainian agricultural exporters, given the current circumstances? Can you identify? You already identified the key elements like insurance risks. What do you think could be what Ukrainian exporters should expect, or at least what would be the advice from us to the EU, to Brussels, how to best handle? What would be the ideal flanking measures by the Commission to help Ukraine go back to traditional markets? Can you give us a couple of ideas?
Yeah, I can give you the reflection for both sides. What Ukrainian business can expect, I don't think Ukrainian business in the position of expecting something from someone. We've already in this position since, I don't know, since we were developing our agricultural sector, because we were reliable mostly on our capacity and our, let's call it this way, creativity. That's one thing. The second thing is that if we're speaking about the possible support that could take place, we need always to think about that Ukraine is, on one side, the great exporter of the bulk products, but on the other side is also a great exporter of the processed products, which require refrigerators, either containers. So in order for us to be competitive on the third markets, we basically need to have the same conditions that we have before the war, which is fully working and functioning the Black Sea ports on one side. On the other side, we face the great competition with the supplies from, for example, Russians that are controlling the whole value chain, that are in a position where they can dump the price for $5 or $7 per ton, which is very difficult for Ukrainian suppliers. Why? Because we face the a limited amount of ships and containers. We face the higher insurance rates. So we have huge amount of extra costs on the chain when we export to the third market. So we need to lower this cost and we need support in this.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Veronica wanted to add something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It was just small remark. Thank you, Alexandra, for giving this data for 2025. Exports is dropping very significantly, and that is very worrying. But just for like clarity, we do not see the results of the new TRQs now. Actually, for the last 5 months, starting June, and the ATMs, they are abolished at the beginning of June, and we already had emergency brake mechanism and some regulations restricting exports in the first half of 25. Then we returned to all TRQs on the 6th of June, and only on the 29th of October, so basically starting November, we are getting some relaxation of access. So the access for EU market was quite difficult for the products subject to TRQs for the most of the year. But what you said, and that is more disturbing, that the products outside TRQs are also dropping. And here is a question: is it indeed these logistics, or is it also the hardships of war starting to pay to wait too much on the Ukrainian producers? And also, I'm wondering, I want to reflect on, Nazar, what you said, but also I remember during negotiations, it was announced that EU will provide support for reorientation and the return of Ukraine to the global markets. Is anybody knows any details of that? It's definitely not the agreement, but more like the parallel track. Are mechanism available? Any details known?
If I'm not mistaken, this is still something to be discovered, both by Ukraine and by the European Commission. The Commission mentioned, as far as I know from the media, from the official Commission statements, the Commission did indeed recognize that Ukraine needs help in getting back to their traditional, as they say, markets around the world, particularly the global south. But they stopped describing what exactly they meant by it. So, moreover, I think where we are also very much concerned is that in the actual text of the agreement that has been adopted by the EU-Ukraine Association Committee in Trade Configuration, that element is missing. So it's only has been fixed in the Commission statement for the media. So basically, it's a political understanding, and we understand all that this is a very shaky ground to proceed. So I think it's also very much in the interest of Ukrainian exporters to see, and also for the Ukrainian government to see that it's not lost in translation. But let's move forward. By the way, I wanted to mention also that we have with us another panelist, Dr. Alex Lisica. Alex Lisica is the founder and the current president of UCAB, and by the way, he has been the author of the idea of launching the UCAB online fireside chats for international audience. I would like to return, dear colleagues, to the question of safeguards and the implementation of this agreement. From one part, we know that, I think Alexander Shemoida already mentioned that from one part, we have a very strict WTO and EU law that defines how safeguards should be applied, so they are not used as protections. But we also know that this agreement is a little bit generous about the safeguards. That's one thing. Alexander, if you could give us, what do you think about this? And second, and this will be a question to everyone, what we have been concerned with is that Poland and other neighboring EU member states very openly mentioned that they will continue to maintain the existing national trade restrictions. How to deal with this problem? Alexander, if you could comment on safeguards.
I will try to be short. Yeah, regarding the safeguard measures, we understand that every country can make such decision, but in case of European Union, it's not one country, and here European Union faced another part of the problem: how to gather this partiality of common market principle, since one country against the decision, another country is for such decision. And here we consider European Union like just a common market with common rules. And at the same time, when the specific country, neighboring country, Poland or other one, continue to use these restrictions on a border, it creates not only the problem in trade between Ukraine and European Union, but it creates some additional discussion inside the European Union, how to deal with this partial approach when European Union have a common decision, but at the same time specific country have a partial decision. The same when we read the amendment to agreement, we see that for such safeguard measures, specific disruption of the market of some member country can be the basic for like negotiation and discussing whether these safeguard measures can be introduced. And here is I'm a bit confused just because I understand that the market balance for whole European Union, from one side is like market balances for each of the countries, but from other side, even rebalancing market, this is the issue of Brussels rather than Kiev, and whether the right approach is to limit the access for Ukrainian products or to introduce additional measures inside the European Union. Because when we limitate the access for some products from Ukraine, at the same time, in some countries, we can create some deficit. And is this actually, this is back to considering Ukraine as a trade partner or as a balancing power of the internal market? And if I can suggest to Brussels something, is to take a look into this part of our exercise, because when we start to calculate Ukraine as a balancing power of internal market, we can make a lot of interesting outcomes. Like Ukraine brings much more stability into sugar markets during last year, then creates some challenges for producers or processors, etc., etc.
Thank you. Alexandra, please.
Yeah, regarding the safeguard measures, which is also very much important to keep in mind, is that we have 3 unilateral bans from the member states that are neighboring Ukraine, and how this is in line with the safeguard measures that are already written down in the revised trade agreement. Right now, it doesn't look like the 3 member states are willing to lift the bans. On the one side, on the other side, the European Commission also needs to do something, because basically the integrity and unity of the single market of the European Union is broken, and therefore cannot say that this is the precedent, but this could also be used, for example, when imports from the Mercosur could reach some limits, which are also not in favor for the member states, for those who take the products. However, what we need to keep in mind is that the 3 member states put in force their unilateral bans when we had unworking completely the sea route, and we had very high stocks. But it looks like right now the export road is relatively stable in Ukraine. During the 24-25 marketing year, managed to export all the stocks that it had since the start of the full-scale invasions. So therefore, the neighboring member states markets are not that much interesting for us, especially when we need to think in mind that Ukrainian products are price driven, and if there is no price on the market, so then there is no need to export more, otherwise the price will drop even more. So it will be very interesting to look forward how the situation with the 3 unilateral bans will develop, since this is also important for us to understand how we will be able to further communicate and let's call it basically rebuild the dialogue with these member states, because this cannot continue forever, especially on our way on the integration to the European Union.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Now the question, not only to you, but also to all our panelists. What the Ukrainian government and what the Ukrainian agricultural exporters should do in this situation? I think we are not, let's say, completely in the dark. We were not completely in the dark when it happened. At least at the bilateral level, the Ukrainian government, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Economy of Ukraine did develop some suggestions, ideas that they put forward to those member states. Can you remind us what they were and whether there is a potential of, let's say, playing a constructive hand, being a partner to the EU and addressing their sensitivities, even if it's very clear that Ukraine is on the losing side of this relationship? Licensing, export licensing?
Which has already been introduced,
Indeed.
but
Indeed. I think
partially
our
for
audience need to a little bit know how it worked and whether it has any potential here.
Alexander, maybe you would, because you would reflect more on that as from the
See,
ministry side.
from the beginning, it was a decision. It was, I'd say, like some sort of unique decision, just because Ukraine introduced this licensing in advance, and it was some sort of self-regulation rather than continuation of to negotiate about the instruments. So during this period of time, the request from Ukraine to European Union continuously was, how can we measure the effects from Ukrainian export to European Union? How to measure this like influence of Ukrainian products, whether it brings some constraints to European market, to European producers, to European consumers, etc. But at the end, this self-regulation was like a goodwill of Ukrainian government to limitate the export, to show to European Union that the situation when concern of particular country is rising, Ukraine can do something in advance and offer instruments which are completely out of agreement. But at the same time, this is a step forward and openness to negotiate and to reflect to such situation. Because from a Polish perspective, when Polish economists see additional 6 million of tons of grain in a balance, the problem is not necessarily this 6 million of tons of grain stay in Poland, because since European Union have as a common policy not only common agricultural or common market, but also common custom rules, which allows to pay all taxes and duties right after any goods cross the border. So normally Poland was one of the countries to pay all duties. And from the statistics, it looks like Poland was consumed most of the supplied products. From other side, and actually it was a step forward. Right now we observe the different situation. Some of the sensitive products and some of the products countries keep this ban became not only sensitive but essential for the countries, like for Romania or Bulgaria. From one side, they feel the deficit of some oil, sunflower oil products or corn. From other side, they continue to keep the ban. So it's less, to my understanding, it's less reasonable from economic point of view. It's more from some political point of view. And to my understanding, that government of Ukraine have to continuously try to redirect the discussion to this evidence-based approach.
Thank you, Alexander. I would like to take an opportunity that we have Alex with us. Alex is a practitioner in agribusiness and agri-export and an agribusiness entrepreneur. Alex, what do you take from the practical point of view as a practitioner in agribusiness of this still persisting unilateral embargoes in Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia? Do they really make a dent in your, for your, let's say, business operations in Europe or in the neighboring nations, and whether how the agriculture business of Ukraine adapts to these new circumstances?
Thank you, Nada. Good morning, everybody. Sorry that I missed the first minutes due to the technical reasons, but I'm staying with you. That's a good point. Thank you very much for all the comments and a very nice presentation, Veronica. Probably just a few comments. Yeah, Poland, Slovakia, also Hungary, coming probably next month as Czech Republic into the group of the countries that will be not really happy about us. But I think the problem is that's yeah, what it means problem. That's a democratic way, and then we should accept it that some governments in European Union stay, some go. The new prime minister's coming, the new parties gonna to be elected, and our job is actually to do our homework. And that probably sometimes we don't do that on the right way, and that way we do provoke discussions which not really necessary. And that's like today in the morning I've just read the German newspaper Spiegel, and the first one article was that European Commission criticizes Ukraine for stopping the reforms, especially in the corruption. So that was actually the most read article of the day or a weekend, I don't know. So anyway, I think such messages, they are really bad for us in the European Union. It doesn't matter do we talk about the agriculture or not, because everyone reads that, sees that, and expects from Ukraine tempo and reforms. And unfortunately, we don't provide such kind of expectations. So that's the first message. The second message, which was also mentioned by Alexandra, communication. How do we communicate with Poland, with Czech Republic, with Hungary, etc.? I mean, we know we've been to Poland many times and participated in such kind of discussions. They are not easy. But the whole Ukrainian position was to wait what happens with the presidential elections, to hope that someone will be elected who is actually more friendly to us. And that's, I think, the wrong way, because we need to be prepared for everything. And to work with all their target audience, I would say, on a continuing basis. And probably that way, yeah, I'm not going to criticize, but I wanted to mention that what we've said many times. Was it really necessary to integrate the Ministry of Agriculture into the Ministry of Economy, if we know, for example, that the huge part of work will come exactly on to the agriculture? So, and there are a lot of different questions which unfortunately stay unanswered. So, coming to your question back with practical issues, of course, it hurts. Especially for the small producers, especially for the niche products like berries, like mentioned honey, etc., etc. So of course we can export grains and oilseeds somewhere else via Odessa seaports, but a lot of infrastructure depends exactly on that countries which we discuss, and especially for the small farmers. The small processing industry, that's the big issue. And how can we avoid it? Nobody knows exactly. And if you look right now, for example, on the lines which are between Poland and Ukraine and a railway, you can wait for months there, because it's like problems in Ukraine, but also the Poland, they block everything. So of course there are problems. And of course, there are problems not only for the classical cash crops in Ukraine, but problems actually for the niche products. And that's exactly the issue which we're going to discuss with our Polish friends, not only with them, obviously.
Thank you, Alex. We're moving, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, to the end of our discussion. And now we are moving towards the Q&A part of our webinar. A quick household rule information to our viewers. Please, if you have questions to our panelists, you can always post them in the webinar chat window, as we will now move to discuss the questions that we received before the webinar from registered participants. So the first question that we received, I think it was partially answered during the discussion. I will cite it. Given the rising political resistance from some EU farmers, what mechanisms could be introduced to make liberalization more politically sustainable between EU and Ukraine as far as the agri-food trade is concerned? So basically, a very quick shooting range of opinions. Who would like to be the first? Well, any ideas are welcome. I think Alexandra is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always ready to discuss this type of questions, and I think me and Veronica and Alexander would agree on the fact that we need to speak with the figures and involve those stakeholders who are interested in Ukrainian products, and this is basically necessary. But this also refers to the fact that European Union wants to build its own stability and predictability in food supplies. But Ukraine, being the second or the third supplier to the EU right now, is number fourth. And being the closest ally and the closest neighbor, who is not just ally and neighbor, but also the candidate country, it should always be the fact that Ukraine can support the autonomous status or the stability of the EU food chain. But it's quite difficult when we have so strong producers associations and stakeholders who are still seeing Ukraine as a competitor rather than the answer to the problems that arise at the markets. And we have so many questions. And it's not only about the shortages in subproducts, but it's also a question of, for example, unpredictable stories like the big outbreak of the avian influenza or drought in the south or maybe flood on the north. So, I mean, there's so many things can be unpredictable, but having Ukraine just right next to you, but still having it's the fourth supplier after Brazil, which not very much in line, especially given all those production standards that Ukraine faces right now with the updated free trade agreement.
Thank you, Alexandra. Anyone else would like to add?
If I may, Alexandra did a great breach, because I just wanted to say that these production standards is not only the challenge, but it's also part of the answer. Because why they appeared there is because allegations, correct or incorrect, about the Ukrainian products, that Ukraine does not follow quality and production standards of EU, and as such, there is no fair level playing field, and the implementation of which and most of these production standards have been already in the association agreement, so Ukrainian business already at least knew that they are supposed to implement them. This is something that gives arguments, if not Polish farmers, because I'm sure it's not about actual production standards, it's about some other things. But to European Union, European Commission, to argue with data and numbers that Ukraine implements that, and as such, all these allegations are incorrect. And this is actually returning to the previous question, why we are not really pushing very hard with our neighbors, because we are talking not only about these 4 or 10 products which are banned and which is unpleasant for business, to put it mildly, but we are talking about accession, and we need the support of Polish government, Slovak government, eventually Hungarian government, because I fully agree with Alex, we have to work with who is elected in the country, who is the representing the country on the way to accession. So basically, I suspect that here we are trading off these temporary bans, not fully in line, at least not fully in line with the spirit of EU accession, to their support and move forward with decisions that Ukraine needs.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you, Veronica. Alex, over to you. Alexander Zhemoyda, I'm sorry. Alexander.
Alex, please.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot of Alexanders and Alexanders in our panel. I think it's very unusual. It's a good sign.
Yeah.
Alexander Zhemoyda, you wanted to say something?
Alex already starting, so please.
Okay, please, Alex,
I have also to run to another one meeting, so that means I just wanted to thank you once again for very fruitful discussion today, and I think the topic is very important for us. And the question is always, like how what we're gonna to do next, in our case, I think we should really concentrate on the homework in Ukraine. Support our Ministry of Economy right now. I mean, we don't have Ministry of Agriculture, but we have still vice ministers which are responsible for that. We have also Vice Prime Minister Taras Kachka, who is very actually informed and professional in terms of the issues, EU integration, etc. So we have also new ambassador to the Belgium. We have a lot of people who are very professional. So I think we should concentrate on that issue. How can we do the work for Ukraine together in the European Union more professional, better, and efficient? And that means also continuing discussions with politicians, but not only with universities, with associations, farmer unions, etc., etc. And that's probably what we ask and what we propose at UCAB. We propose that platform for such discussions. So any idea is very welcome, even for the next discussion round here, but not only. So try to stay together. We have to stay together because we have no other option. Thank you once again for very good discussion today, and I wish you all the best. Once again, I have to run right now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Alex. Indeed, we have arrived at the end of our event today. There have been a number of questions pre-recorded before the event, but they have been answered by our panelists. So with this, I would like to thank you, each and every one of you, for your time. I think our discussion was very interesting. I think we barely scratched the surface in terms of discussing, let's say, reviewing this really a closure of a chapter in EU-Ukraine trade relations as far as agriculture is concerned, and the opening of the new one. We clearly see, at least as we discussed the situation of with implementation of this agreement, that the new chapter will not be an easy one. But I think Ukraine has the resilience, ingenuity, creativity to overcome these obstacles, and we look forward with optimism, and we do intend to continue discussing them with our international viewers. So once again, thank you very much, dear panelists, dear audience, for your patience, for your interest. Please stay tuned to our broadcasts. We will be coming again online regularly, and the recording of this and past and future UCAB webinars will be available on the UCAB YouTube channel. Once again, thank you very much.